France has its fingers in many pies when it comes to international borders. But you know what they say, the longest border isn't always the one you'd expect. It's not Spain, neither is it Belgium. Then which one is it? It's actually Brazil. France's longest border is with this South American giant. But there's a twist in this tale. Between Brazil and Venezuela, there are these little pockets of land. You've got Guyana, which used to be a British colony but eventually gained its independence. Then you have Suriname, which, believe it or not, was formerly a Dutch colony that followed suit. However, the show's star, the outlier in the game, is French Guiana. Did you know that it refused to take the independence route like its neighbour and decided to become a full-fledged region of France? Now, the big question is, why did it go this way? Does French Guiana actually want independence? Before we start, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon to never miss a video from us. France's second largest region. First, let's familiarize you with French Guiana a bit. It is the second largest French region with an area of 83,534 square kilometers. That's roughly the size of Serbia. Despite being almost 7,216 kilometers away from Paris, it is the largest overseas region of the European Union. Even their official currency is the euro. The history of Guyana is a whirlwind adventure. French colonists made their mark on the Guyanese coast back in the 17th century, where they established settlements and tiny plantations. A tug-of-war between the French, Dutch and British followed as they vied for control of this territory. Back then, the Guyanese coast was rumoured to be overflowing with gold. Louis XV even sent thousands of settlers in 1763 to search for gold, only for them to discover a land filled with hostile natives and tropical diseases. That must have been a lesson for the history books. By the end of it, only a few hundred of them survived. Then, in 1794, Guyana became a political dumping ground during the French Revolution. Scores of opponents were shipped off to its shores. Later, African slaves were brought in, plantations sprouted up along the rivers, and the export of sugar, wood and spices finally brought some prosperity to the colony. The historical rollercoaster continued as Guyana changed hands a few times. It was taken by Portuguese Brazil in 1809, but was returned to French control by the Treaty of Paris in 1814. That marked its official making as a French colony. By 1852, it became a designated home for French convicts. For nearly a century, from 1852 to 1938, over 70,000 detainees from the entire French Empire were shipped off to Guyana. Yes, Guyana, even right now, is one of the most ethnically diverse regions. Fast forward to World War II, the local government underwent a political identity crisis. Now listen to this. First, they initially declared allegiance to the collaborationist Vichy government, despite widespread support for Charles de Gaulle's liberation movement. But in March 1943, they had a change of heart. Guess what they did? Yep, they joined Free France. In March 1946, Guyana made it official and became an integral part of France as a department. A short science lesson, the Guyana Space Center. Now, why is French Guiana so important to France? This overseas French region is most famous for its space center. And we're not going to lie, it's a cool one. You might think that the French Space Center would be nestled somewhere in the heart of Paris, or perhaps along the sunny coast of Marseille. Nope. It's actually located in a place called Kourou in French Guiana, which is called Guyana Space Center. The main reason for that is its proximity to the equator. Why is this important? Let's discuss a bit of science. You see, launching a rocket closer to the equator is rocket science magic. It's about 25% more efficient than launching from Europe. Oh, and let's not forget the Earth's rotation. It lends a helping hand by giving those rockets an extra boost in speed. Now, the Space Center's presence didn't just send rockets soaring, it also kind of ignited the local job market. Along with that, it invited over a bunch of foreign technicians and even some soldiers, including the infamous French Foreign Legion. Now, here's the interesting part. Without French Guiana and its Space Center, there'd be no independent French and EU space policy. Do you see why this colony is so important? Plus, over in French Polynesia, Guyana has its claim to fame as the go-to spot for testing nuclear weapons. This lethal combination of space, nuclear and naval industries gives France a strategic advantage that's right up there with the big dogs, the USA and Russia. In the 21st century, nuclear energy, space exploration and ocean resources are the keys to geopolitical power, and France's overseas territories, especially French Guiana, are the crown jewels in their modern colonial empire. But that's for France. Woes of French Guiana. What does French Guiana get out of being a space center? As it turns out, not so much. French Guiana, despite its shiny European spaceport, has a darker side to its story. Currently, this region is plagued with poverty and sky-high unemployment rates, and you can trace it back to its history as a slave society and a notorious prison colony. For Guyana, the Space Centre has brought some unintended consequences. They've got the Dutch disease, which, in this context, means that the rapid growth of one sector led to the decline of other economic areas. Regardless of having gold as their second largest export, Guyana is a major drug hub for Europe. Many of the folks involved in the drug trade come from even poorer Suriname. The real center of this drug game is the city of Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni. In 2021, authorities managed to nab 512 mules and seize 1.26 tons of cocaine. A colony that wants to stay. So, why is French Guiana still a part of France? Guyana's quest for autonomy started pretty early on. In the 70s and 80s, the Guyana Socialist Party was riding high. They were all about the whole "more autonomy, please" idea. Protests, as they tend to do, became the megaphone for these autonomists. They marched and rallied in 1996, 1997, and 2000. But all of it ended up in violence. Fast forward to 2010, the fate of Guyana was put to the test with a referendum. The question on the table: whether Guyana should become an autonomous overseas territory of France. And the results were shocking. It was a resounding no, with 70% of the votes against the idea. And to make things more interesting, the voter turnout was 48%. In December 2015, the department got a new lease on life with the Assembly of French Guiana taking the reins within the fresh and fancy territorial community of French Guiana. Currently, in 2020, the GDP per capita of French Guiana is 15,000 euros. Martinique has had its GDP per capita shoot up by more than 10,000 euros over the past 2 decades. But the GDP per capita in France in 2020 was about 40,377 US dollars. So, while these regions might be on the rise, they're not quite at the same level as the mainland. Despite the poverty and drug trade, the folks in the region don't seem to be raising any banners for independence. It looks like they're content with the way things are. Whether they stick with the status quo or shake things up in the near future, as long as things don't go south in a big way, it's a safe bet that this little piece of land up in the northern tip of Amazonia is going to remain French for the foreseeable future. Enjoyed this video? Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. See you next time.